Okay, this video is to show you how to get the calculator to work on getting some of these statistics if StatCrunch is not working on your computer. Um, it's really not hard to get it from the calculator, but you'll just have to be careful for typos is the main thing. Alright, so in the calculator, so I pulled up this problem 6b number 15, sorry, 6b15, which is question number 1. You maybe already have that. This same question comes up in the review. So our data is right here. So I'm going to start out by typing the data from the East Coast into my calculator. So on the calculator, you hit the data button, and it brings up these lists. So I'm just going to type in the data. And again, just be careful to not have a typo. Okay, so there's the data. To have the calculator calculate some stuff, we need to use the stat function, which is the second feature of that data button. So we're going to hit the second button on the calculator and then hit data again, and that brings up the stats menu. We're just using that first choice, one variable statistics. So you hit enter, and then it will ask you which list you want to use and the frequency, but it should default to what you need, which is list 1 and frequency 1, and then hit enter one more time to calculate. So it brings up a list that has loads of information in it. We don't need all of the information, just some of it. So for, let's see, for East Coast, I'll use green. Mean is the X with the bar above it, so 157.83. Standard deviation is the one that has the capital letter S, just like this, 77.72. And I think rounding to 2 decimal places works on all of these problems. Just watch for that in MyMathLab. And there's more data. You just have to scroll down. We don't need number 4, number 5, number 6. Number 7 we need. Minimum is the low value. So 104.4. The lower quartile Q1, 123.6. Median, 131.7. And then if I keep scrolling, I'll get upper quartile and the maximum. Now, that's all of the information that you need from the calculator. To answer this 15-part question, you also need the range, and then it'll ask you about the range rule of thumb. So, so I'm going to just hit clear to go out of this screen, and then hit clear again to get to my regular screen. To get the range, it's max minus min. So for this data set, that's 314.4 minus 104.4. So I'm using the max and the min. And that gives me 210. And sometimes there'll be a decimal on this number. This one just happens to be 0.0. And then once you have that range, you can get your range rule of thumb by just dividing that range by 4. 52.5. So what the range rule of thumb is supposed to be is it's supposed to be an approximation of the standard deviation, but you can see that for this data set, it is not a good approximation. It's off by 25 or so, so it's really not a good approximation. Usually if you have an outlier like we do here, 314, usually when you have an outlier, that range rule of thumb approximation for the standard deviation doesn't work. So then you would just repeat that process for the West Coast. I'm going to go ahead and do that mostly because I need to show you how to clear the list in the calculator. So if you hit that data button again and you want to put in your West Coast countries, you can just like type it over the top if you want, 96.8, and it will change it. But that can be a little risky in case one data set has a different amount of data or something. So it's probably safer to clear your data set. So you hit the data button. I'm going to go back to the home screen really quick. So hit the data button once, brings up the list. If you hit it a second time, it brings up the clear menu, and you can just hit enter to clear list 1. So 96.8, and then I'll put in the rest of that data. We have an outlier there for sure. Okay, so again, to get the data statistics calculated, hit the second stat, hit enter a couple times, and then there's your information. So the mean would be the x with the bar on top, and then the standard deviation is next. Skip a couple down to the minimum right there. 87.5, 92.9, median 95.2, and I think there might be a question that just asks you for the median. You could get it using this same process. 96.8 and 228.7. For the range, you'll have to calculate that. So our maximum 228.7, subtract our minimum is 141.2, and then if we divide that by 4, that'll give us our range rule of thumb number, 35.3. And again, that's not a very good approximation of the standard deviation. One of the multiple choice sections will ask you, and in this case, they're both not very good approximations of the standard deviation. If I were you, what I would do on this is make a little chart like the chart I made, because when you go to type it into MyMathLab, it kind of skips around. I think at first it asks you for like the mean and the median of East, and then it will ask you the mean and the median of the West, and then on the next part it'll ask you the 5-number summary, so you'll be putting in all of those, and then it'll switch to the West and you'll put in all of those, and then it switches back to the East asking for the standard deviation, so you would put that in, and it asks for the West. So it really is kind of like a lot of back and forth. So I think if you just write down these numbers on your paper, and then you can kind of go through and type them in pretty quickly. So again, if you need to clear your list out, you hit data twice and just hit enter to clear the list. To calculate the stats, you do second data. If you're using that little calculator, that's probably enough information for you. I'm going to pull up my graphing calculator in case some of you were using the graphing calculator. It's almost the same, just a couple little variations on the buttons, but it's more or less the same. So on the graphing calculator, you would use the stat button and hit enter to edit the list. You'll type in your list, kind of the same as the little calculator, and then you'll hit stat and go over to calculate the one variable statistics. Hit enter a few times. It's the exact same list, just a different way of accessing it. In the graphing calculator, to clear the list, You can use, sorry, let me go back. You can use number 4 right here, clear list. Oh, it wants to know the list number. I don't really like to do it that way though. I'll show you this other way. If you are on the list screen, go up to the list name and hit clear enter. Don't do delete enter, do clear enter. You want to clear the list. If you do delete, it will actually physically delete list 1 from the table, and you don't want to do that. If you're having any calculator problems, just let me know, and I will try to help you troubleshoot them. Thanks.